Today on Locked On Canadiens, it's very quiet. A little bit too quiet, which means Kent Hughes probably has something up his sleeve.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every day. My name is Laura Sab, also known as the Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by the wonderful Ian Boisvert, my co-host, also known as Maybe It's Ian. And Ian, we're hearing things about Jake Evans today, and we are going to have to tackle them, obviously. So we'll talk about Jake Evans, we're going to talk about Ivan Demidov, and we're going to talk about the Laval Rocket in this episode. But first, let's talk about the reports about how much money and term Jake Evans wants.
Yeah, there's some numbers, there's some rumblings, some chatter floating around about Jake Evans' contract demands or requests, or just his bottom line, which is that he wants 5 years and $4 million per season. The thing about contract negotiations, first of all, before we get into whether or not that is realistic, the thing about contract negotiations is you don't come in with your lowest number, because the other team, the other party of that negotiation will start even lower than that, and you'll meet somewhere in the middle.
Which is lower than what you want.
Right. So even if we're looking at this as, man, that's too much, maybe with whatever team he ends up playing for, whether it's Montreal or elsewhere, they probably talk him down a little bit. They probably meet somewhere that's more in line with what players of that caliber should be making as the cap expands. This is where I want to focus the lion's share of this conversation on, which is the salary cap. We're very used to a flat cap, a salary cap that does not increase, or increases by $1.5, $3 million at a time, and it's not a meaningful jump. The cap is going from $88 million to $95.5 million, the biggest jump in some time. And then after that, it'll be over $100 million, and then after that, it'll be even higher. The thing that I think people are missing in this Jake Evans, is he asking too much aspect of this, is one, he's proven that he's more valuable than the contract he's currently on. He's making $1.7 million. That's worth 1.9% of the salary cap. Would you agree that he's outplaying his contract value? Like he's
100%.
bringing in more than that.
100%. A lot. And I really want to talk about, and this is like, if you've been listening to the show for long enough, you'll understand, like, because I have this thing about bottom six players. Bottom six players are not plugs. They're not replaceable. They play a massively important role on your team, and having a bottom six than your opponent is a huge advantage. It is a massive unexploited market inefficiency that most teams don't do. And we have seen throughout the Canadiens season, the games that they played well in that run when they were in the mix, and the last couple of games, when their bottom six is fully functional and doing the things it's good at, the Montreal Canadiens win. Not just win, they dominate. They shut out teams. Your bottom six is important. You cannot just throw in a goon. You cannot just fill it up with rookies. You have to make it better than the other team's bottom six. I will die on this hill. You need good bottom six players, not just quote unquote bottom six players, guys that on another team could challenge for your second line, for their second line.
Yeah.
That's what you need to win.
And I think that's what's made the Canadiens pretty successful this year. Their bottom six is full of guys that we thought were, and they quite honestly are on bloated contracts.
Yes.
But because of the role that they are in, they're able to succeed, right? Like Gallagher, even when he was on the first line, early in the prime of his career, he always played like a fourth liner.
Yes.
He always played like an energy forward who's just going to get the puck to the net by any means necessary. I also, we talk about percentage of the cap. Let's look at that $4 million cap hit that Jake Evans would have.
Yes.
Yes, that's a big chunk of this year's cap. The good news is that number will never be on this year's cap. It starts next year. And, for out of 95.5, it's a little over 4% of the cap. 4.1, I believe it is. The year after that, it's worth even less. And the year after that, it's worth even less. The third year of this salary cap boom that we're going to see, the third year of whatever contract Jake Evans signs, if he makes $4 million, it's 3.5% of the cap. I took a look around the league. I looked at Daily Faceoff to find all of the lines, the current lines for every team in the NHL. And I tried to find some expensive fourth liners, and it's not out of the norm. I found 16 teams, 19 players, ranging from like Miles Wood makes 2.5 for Colorado. Adam Henrique makes 3 for Edmonton. He's their fourth line center. Tanner Jeannot, 2 2/3 million. Yakov Trenin in Minnesota, 3.5. Hey, Yoel Armia, 3.4 million. There he is. Nashville, Colton Sissons, Eric Holla for New Jersey, Garnet Hathaway. Pittsburgh has 2, Danton Heinen and Nola Chari. That's probably bad, and we can see that with the way Pittsburgh's been playing. Barclay Goodrow, Jordan Eberle, Radek Faksa, David Kampf, Alex Kerfoot, Nick Bukestad, and Kevin Stenlund. All 3 of those guys make up the fourth line for Utah. They make 3.5, 210, and 2. Like, that's brutal. So there's a lot of, and like it's split right down the middle. 16 of those teams, 16 teams have one of those players at least. Half of them are going to make the playoffs. The other half aren't. So it's not like only good teams do this, only bad teams do this. Teams like to pay a lot of money because it's a luxury thing to have. And if Kent Hughes balks at this, and I'm not saying he shouldn't, I'm not saying you have to go out and get Jake Evans, but let's be clear about the bet that he's making. The bet that Kent Hughes is making is that, okay, well, next year, our 2 bottom 6 center positions will be filled by some combination of Alex Newhook, Ornbeck, and Kapanen, right? Those are the next 3 that are in line. Okay, cool. So you make that bet. I don't even think it's a particularly bad one. I think Beck could be our fourth line center next year, no problem. Problem is, okay, now it doesn't work. What do you do now? Well, now you're spending assets or more cap space to fill the role that Jake Evans currently has. And we're kind of sticker shocked at Evans's value right now. What if this is the cheapest an elite fourth line center will ever be ever again? Like that's what we might have to be looking at here, is that he's setting the market for all of these other specialist players. So I know I can already see the comments. You can't pay that much for a fourth line. The problem with the Canadiens is that they love to roll 4 lines. They're built to roll 4 lines. All of their core pieces, Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, Goulet, they all took pay cuts, or at least, discounts. That's where you have to start spending that money, not overpaying, obviously, but that's going to be market value. I don't see a reality where it's not.
I think people are so bogged down in the idea that a fourth liner needs to make less than $1 million. And that's a long time ago. It's a long time ago. We are now in 2025 and the salary cap is going up. And so I think personally for me, it's really like you talked about percentages, right? If you're comparing your fourth liners now to your fourth liners from a decade ago, you're probably ending up getting the same percentage.
Yeah. And comparing the way that your fourth liners played a decade ago, right? Like, yeah, some of them might have been able to do what Jake Evans does, I suppose, but that's another calculation in this. Okay, so you have a fourth line center that you can throw out there and trust at 5-on-5, but you don't trust to kill penalties. Well, now that means your top 6 centers are having to shoulder that weight. They have to play that. The whole point of the way the Canadiens are constructed to kill penalties this year is that Nick Suzuki doesn't have to do a lot of it, and it frees him up to do other stuff. Next year, we're looking, and we've said this a bunch on this show, and we'll continue to say it until proven otherwise. The Canadiens' penalty kill unit, their top penalty kill unit, 3 of those guys are gone next year in Armia, Evans, and David Savard. And you guys can say, well, David Savard needs to go. Sure, fine. Who's replacing him? It's the same conversation we have about Mike Matheson, resetting the counter now. It's okay. You want to get rid of him. Who is playing those minutes? Who's stepping into that role? Maybe it's Arbor Xhekaj. Maybe it's Jaden Struble. But that remains to be seen. And until we have that plan and we have that laid out in front of us, it's scary to go into next season without a Jake Evans replacement, or just Jake Evans for that matter. Like I said, it's a gamble Kent Hughes is taking. We'll see what he ends up doing and whether or not it pays off.
Yeah. And here's my thing is that if Jake Evans goes to free agency, there is at least one GM that's going to pay that.
1,000%.
Yeah.
I'd be dumbfounded if it was just one.
Yeah.
Like I forget who it was. Seattle signed a center, Chandler Stevenson. They signed him to like $6 million or something last year, and everyone went, "You're out of your mind." Well, now that the cap's going up, that doesn't look so bad. It's still not great, but you overpay in free agency. That's what you have to do every time.
You pay for quality, and for me, I would be a little bit more concerned about term than the money, like in my opinion, because there will be a point where there will be replacements for Jake Evans, and they will be good.
Yeah.
We're just not there yet. And if the Canadiens need to take a step forward and not flounder next year, they do need to take that risk. So
Yep.
I'm not Ken Hughes. I don't know what he's going to do. He's very fond of dropping news at 8 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock in the morning. So, by the time you're listening to this episode, he might have traded someone, signed Jake Evans, signed someone else, thrown him down a well. I don't know. All of this to say is that I don't like it. It does sound like a lot of money. It does sound like a long time. I just don't think in the context of the changing game that it's that outlandish is where I'm at.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say is, and I'll say this with every free agent, every contract, every dollar that we talk about in the NHL, none of it's your money. Relax. Everybody chill out. They're not taking the money out of your wallet, man.
It's coming out of Jeff Molson's wallet. So
Yeah.
All right. Coming up next, we do want to talk about Ivan Demidov, and not to, rain on anyone's party, but are we getting a little bit ahead of ourselves when it comes to Ivan Demidov, or shall we just be reckless, throw caution to the wind, and get super excited? And that's coming up in just one moment. I'm going to get really weird. I'm going to talk about smells right now, because one of my favorite things is the smell of fresh coffee in the morning, or when you get a brand new bag of coffee and you can smell the beans through the bag. And I have to tell you, I got tired of settling for grocery store brands that just weren't cutting it. That's why I turned to Trade. And let me tell you, this coffee is next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the US. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. I took their quick quiz, and in under a minute, they matched me with a roast that was fresh, smelled incredible, and tasted even better. I'm not kidding. I just answered a bunch of questions, and they sent me exactly what I like. It was an Ethiopian roast, women owned. Like, that is 100% my jam. I don't know how they knew me so well. The subscription will also make it so easy. No more last-minute grocery store runs or settling for whatever you find out there on the shelf. And if you don't love your first bag, no worries. Trade will replace it for free until they get it just right. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. That's drinktrade, TRADE.com /lockedonnhl for 40% off your first order. All right, let's talk about Ivan Demidov.
Yeah, a conversation I didn't really expect to have, but one I think that it's about time we have, to be honest. Habs on Reddit on Blue Sky, which is very funny to say. Just we're on two different, we're just running two different social media platforms in one. They posted a screenshot of an ad that ran on RDS for Habs season tickets, for the waiting list for Habs season tickets, and the only player on the screen right now is Ivan Demidov. They're very much selling next season as the season Ivan Demidov arrives. And I don't know if I'm concerned. This is going to be a little bit of a therapy session between me and you, Laura, because I don't know if it's reasonable to be concerned, but I am worried that we're putting a little bit too much on this kid right away. That's not to say he won't grow into that and we won't grow to expect it 2-3 years down the line. But like I'm getting, and I hate saying this, and I'm not comparing the players, I'm comparing the Messiah aspect of it. I'm getting Jonathan Drouin vibes just from like the amount of expectations thrown at this kid coming into this city. And I'm worried. Should I stop freaking out? Am I having a problem?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm
Thanks for giving it to
honestly,
me straight.
I'll give it to you straight. So one thing, we're not getting ahead of ourselves in that, the Canadians have spoken all about bringing him over next year. He's coming next year. He wants to come next year, right? You're talking about same kind of pressure. I agree. Different players. Two different players.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
a
Let's
very
look
good
at
point.
every team, or almost every team that's gotten a first overall pick, right? Your Edmonton Oilers getting McDavid. Your even probably Sidney Crosby, like your Penguins getting Sidney Crosby, right? Stamkos. What team doesn't market a player like that immediately after they get them, right? Celebrini, right? That's the Sharks' entire marketing. Come see Celebrini. As soon as
Yeah.
you get that first overall pick, right? That's what you do. Now, Ivan Demidov was not picked first overall. I would not argue that he should have gone first overall over Macklin Celebrini, but he could very easily have gone second, third, right? We got lucky in
Yep.
that he fell to fifth, right? So I don't think it's too much of a stretch to use a high potential player as a marketing ploy. So that's the marketing aspect of it. Now let's talk specifically about Ivan Demidov. You want to look at this kid's accomplishment. You want to look at the way he answers questions in the media. You want to look at the excitement. You want to look at what he does with so little time or so much time on the ice, right? He got penalized essentially for all intents and purposes for not extending his contract last year, right? They put him in a lower league against worse competition, and he did not stray. He did not feel the pressure. His intention was to come to the NHL. We're glad it worked out for us. Just look at the way that he answered the question to the front office when they asked, would we be crazy not to pick you if you fell to fifth? And he immediately said yes, right? I don't see Jonathan Drouin doing that. Jonathan Drouin was not the guy sitting in the room being interviewed by the team. And if the team said, are we crazy not to pick you at whatever they had, right? Whatever, let's just say it's like the top 5 teams. Yeah. He's not answering that question. Yes. He does not have the same faith in his own abilities, because the thing with Jonathan Drouin was everything we projected onto him was not a promise he made. He never made that promise. We gave ourselves that promise, right? Whereas Ivan Demidov is making that promise. And not only that, the front office is making that promise. Everybody's pretty confident. We do have to make sure that when he does actually get here, we give him some time to adjust. We give him some time to adjust to the game, to Marty, to the team, to his assignments. He's going to be phenomenal. We have absolutely no reason to think anything otherwise. So personally, for me, I'm good.
I appreciate that. And I do think that point is very well met, that he is, to put it one way, built different, right? Like he's, and that's sort of the MO.
RIP to your friends, but I'm built different.
Yeah, exactly. And that seems to be the MO with this front office, is finding not only the right players for this team, but the right people. The trying to find a kid, which is what all these guys are when they get drafted. They're kids. When you were 18, you were a dumb kid. Like that's what all of these guys are. Trying to find a kid, especially from overseas, who we think has the right mettle to come over here now or relatively soon and immediately step into the craziest hockey market in the league, in the world maybe, and succeed and not have that be a hindrance, but something that propels you forward. It's why, like, I love the Jacob Fowler pick, because I think that guy has it. Whatever it is that they're looking for, that Slav quality, that I guess now Ivan Demidov quality, Jacob Fowler has that too, right? Like the big game, big moment, big lights guy. You want him in the net.
Yeah.
Demidov, it's tough to know, because like, at least in his playing, as a prospect, he hasn't played in a bunch of big moments for the KHL yet. They're going to go to the playoffs. It'll be fun to watch, that team in the playoffs and see how he can perform there. But like, he didn't get to play World Juniors because of Russia being banned from international competition. We haven't really seen him on a lot of those stages. I'm not saying he can't do it, because you're right. I think he has He has the juice to be able to do this sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I until I see him in a Canadiens uniform and start to see that the Twitter highlights are not just our blue sky highlights are not just that, and there's actually a real hockey player on the other side of that screen, that's when I'll start to feel like we can. I'm not going to tell other people how to feel. I can fully embrace the hype train. But I appreciate the therapy session, but I do. You have walked me off the ledge quite a bit, but I will reserve a little bit of concern between now and when we see him in Montreal.
Okay. So one last thing I will say is that Kent Hughes is an experienced agent. He is a people person. Jeff Gorton is clearly a people person.
High emotional intelligence across the board.
Yes, right. And there were a lot of experienced scouts in that room. And are any of those guys unable to see the difference between bluster and confidence? I don't think so, right? So to me, like they saw it, they believed it, they thought it was for them, and I have that confidence until I see otherwise. So I feel like he's going to be able to deal with it. There will always be doubters, there will always be naysayers. There will always be growing pains. He's going to, Cole Caulfield went through half a season and then immediately turned around and scored 30 something goals. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Right? So I believe that he can handle it.
Yeah, I'm not a naysayer. Don't get me wrong. Like I believe in this player a lot.
Yeah.
This market's just different, and it's going to be really. It's like we are months away from seeing him here, and they've got him on RDS during games, promoting season ticket waiting list for next year.
Yeah,
it's a. If this kid can pull it off, we're talking about one of the greatest to do it in Montreal. Like that's the kind of caliber of person we're expecting to see. So it's a tall task. I look forward to watching him pull it off, though.
I'm very, very excited about this kid, and I think he's excited to be here. So let's go with that. End of therapy session. That will be $200, Ian.
I thought your guys' healthcare was free. That sucks.
I will turn it over to the Laval Rocket. We're going to talk about the Laval Rocket in a moment, give some people some flowers, and maybe guilt of 4 more co-hosts or 2, and that's coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right. I have a message for one Scott Matla. Our listeners have asked us multiple times when you will come back and talk about the Rocket. This is an official guilting call.
We have his phone number, right? Like we could just
do have
text
his
him.
phone number.
We don't have to. It doesn't have to be like this.
But he always says soon, and then he doesn't show up. Or he doesn't give us a fixed time. So this is us calling him out and guilting him. We love Scott. We're very, very, very excited to have him back on soon. But in his absence, we kind of have to give some Laval Rocket players their flowers. Particularly, I want to focus on 2 of them, Adam Engstrom and Florian Jacki. I think Florian Jacki is the easiest one to get out of the way. I believe he has now 15 goals on the season. And he's proving to be a lot more than just a goon, which is kind of a refrain that we were talking about when we were talking about his brother, when his brother first kind of came into the picture, was that, he's not just a fighter. He really does bring value to a team. And we were literally just talking about your bottom 6 having to be very valuable, right? Arbor Jackeye said that he thinks that Florian could make it onto the NHL team. I'm not that convinced. Like, I'm not out there saying he could, but I think that he's been a really fun, like, persona on the Rocket.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he has a game that you can easily see transferring to the NHL, right? Like he's going to be a bottom six player, third line energy, fourth line energy kind of player who can chip in the odd goal. But just like watch him move around the ice and watch him just agitate. I think his shot's pretty decent. I think his vision is pretty decent as well. He's no slouch
Yeah.
offensively. I wonder if they can make him into an effective penalty killer. I don't know that he is or isn't one right now in the A, but if they can mold him into an effective penalty killer, maybe not next season or the season after that, but down the line, that sort of gives him an edge over other players of his sort of caliber, right?
Yeah.
Or his sort of skill set. It's what do you do? What do you do here? If you can do, it's why we talk about Jake Evans getting all this money, because he's really good at penalty killing and he's a right-handed center. That sets him apart from a lot of the other players on this market.
Right.
What can Florian Jackeye do to make himself not a difference maker in the sense that he'll change games, but a difference maker in the sense that, well, we have this guy, but we have Florian Jackeye who can do that plus. Can he find that?
I agree. And then we're almost running out of time, and we have a fun trivia question from yesterday to talk about. Adam Engstrom. So I have to be honest, I thought that they were going to keep him in the NHL. That was my first thought, because at the time I thought he had outplayed his competition to be on the NHL team. Right? Who was it?
Mhm.
Who were his competition? Like Logan Mailloux,
Sure.
James Struble,
Yeah.
right? He outplayed them. Like,
Yeah.
I really
a while
liked
ago,
him.
Jordan Harris, you could
Yeah.
throw him into that conversation, and they
Yes.
moved Harris to make that log jam a little bit easier for those guys.
Yes. And then it was still like a massive logjam.
Right.
So for me, like, I feel like he has come as advertised, and I think maybe it was my patience that really needed to change, right? Like, I do feel that, like, the AHL is the right place for him now, and potentially even next year. But I do see what our good friend Patrick Bexell, who we will not guilt because we have already invited him on and he has already said he will come. It's just our people are talking to his people because there's a time difference, and then we're changing clocks soon, and it's a whole thing.
Forgot about that.
But now we know why he was so high on this player. And
Yeah.
it's not that people were like laughing at him or anything like that. It's just that he was one of the only people who had noticed.
Yeah.
It's that Adam Engstrom was doing it quietly. So for me, I'm just really, really excited. So sorry,
Yeah.
you're about to say something.
That's an interesting player. I've seen him now a couple times play in Laval. I love his skating. He's one of those guys that, the skating looks effortless. He just glides over the ice. His footwork is very strong. I think he makes some good decisions with the puck. I think at times his defense is surprising in a positive way. Like he makes a play, breaking up a rush or breaking up, just play along the boards, and you didn't realize he had that in him. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a player that he would transfer to the NHL as, and I'm having a hard time finding that player comp or like what he can be at the NHL level. But that's a guy to watch for next season. In training camp, can he make a name for himself in training camp? Not unlike, Kapanen and Heineman did this past training camp. They made the roster look silly without them.
Yes.
Can Engstrom do that next year? It'll be interesting to see what they do.
Yes. Also, for a specific subset of listeners, the solution is not to trade Mike Matheson. The logjams will exist whether they trade him or not, and they're not going to be able to replace those minutes.
Some players go where the puck is. Some players go where the puck is going to be. That's what Laura just did. She went to where the puck was going to be, which is you guys trading Mike Matheson.
I was Lane Hudsoning there.
Yes, you were one step ahead. I really appreciate that.
All right, let's get into our trivia question, because yesterday's is a really fun one.
Yeah, I think so too. It's so Tuesday was Montreal's first regulation win over the Carolina Hurricanes since 2018. It was also their first shutout win over Carolina since 2015. And I didn't ask you for the goalie because it's a 2015 Montreal Canadiens shutout. You know the answer is Carey Price to that. There's no reason for me to ask that question. But
that was in the era where he was playing 90 out of 82 games a year.
Yeah, that was the Carey Price playing out of his mind era. Like those were the seasons that put him in the Hall of Fame when he gets there. Anyway, I said to name the goal scorers from that game. And Super Rain had it first, Good Sport second, Manny third. The goal scorers were Dale Weiss, Brendan Gallagher, David Desharnais, and Max Pacioretty. If you told me the Canadiens scored 4 goals in a game in 2015, it's those guys. You know what I mean? Like that's a moment in time. Carey Price gave up no goals, and those were the guys that scored a goal. The most Michel Therrien game maybe ever
in history. In history.
Yes.
I did not get that. I actually I named PK Subban, Brendan Gallagher, Max Pacioretty, and I can't remember who the other guy was that I named. And it was really funny because I kept trying to think, and then it was David Desharnais that I guessed, and then I could not think of Dale Weiss.
Yeah, and then my wife heard us talking about it from the other room and opened the door and went, "Is the answer Dale Weiss?" So shout out my wife, Kristen. She nailed that one. That was a lot of fun. All right, today's question is a follow the player path. Going into the same era with this one, so I'll give you that small hint. Dallas, Buffalo, St. Louis, Detroit, Montreal. Dallas, Buffalo, St. Louis, Detroit, Montreal. You have the answer, put it in the comments, email it to us, get it to us somehow. We'll shout you out on the show.
And for our listeners, I've been trying to think about it all recording long, and I still haven't been able to get the answer. So hopefully you'll do better than I do on this. And if you want to leave us the answer, you can leave it in the YouTube comments or email it to us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. I'm going to give you guys that email address again because tomorrow is our mailbag episode. Please send us mailbag questions at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Of course, you can leave them in the YouTube comments as well. And please subscribe to this podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, or both. That both works too. You can also find us on social media. We are at Locked On Canadiens on Blue Sky, Locked On Canadiens on Instagram, Locked On Canadiens on TikTok. We're basically just Locked On Canadiens everywhere, and we have just spent an hour or so coming up with fun content ideas for our social media, so please make sure you check us out there. You'll find me at The Active Stick. You will find my co-host at Maybe It's Ian. You will find us here tomorrow with the Friday mailbag, so make sure you tune in.